In our last video, we looked at how to solve a right triangle, a missing side of a right triangle. And first things first, I wanted to give a little bit of variety in my videos, so I made a different background. So I hope you enjoy that. Yeah, so on the last video, we looked at having an angle. Say we had like this angle here, and it was 50 degrees. And we wanted to look at finding a missing, say like the hypotenuse, we'll call it y, doesn't matter what variable we pick. And we talked about how we can use the acronym SOHCAHTOA to figure out a side length that was missing. And so we looked at the relationship between the two sides that we are trying to figure out, the one we have and the one that's unknown. And then we would also kind of look and see what the relationship was of those two sides in relation to the triangle, the angle of the triangle that we have. And so in this case, we would say that we have, in this angle right here, this 50-degree angle, we have the side adjacent to that angle. And we have the hypotenuse that we can put into a little equation. We'd say this is the cosine of 50 is equal to 9 over y. And then we'd solve that for y, and then we'd have our answer. Okay. Well, what if we had the side lengths and we wanted to know what is the missing angle? What is the missing angle? So let's say that we have some angle theta. Theta means it's just an unknown. It's like a variable for numbers. We typically use theta for angles. All right, and so what if we said that this is 10 and this is 15? Okay. So we want to know, okay, am I going to use sine, am I going to use cosine, or am I going to use tangent? I always like to put this up at the top of my page so that I can use it as a reference when I'm looking at this. Remember, this is in blocks of 3, so each one is its own little acronym. And so if I look at this angle, I have 10 and I have 15. This is the side opposite theta, and 15 is the hypotenuse. And so we have opposite and we have hypotenuse. So which trig function are we going to use to figure out theta? And so if you notice, we have opposite and hypotenuse, so we're going to use sine. So here's how we do it. We say the sine of theta is equal to the side opposite divided by the hypotenuse. And so this is how we set it up. Now, last time we had the angle and we could just solve for the variable. Well, now we don't have the angle. We're trying to find the angle. And so what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and say, okay, how do I get rid of sine so that I just have theta? What I'm looking for is theta is equal to, and then some degree measure. That's my answer. Okay, and so how do we get rid of sine so that we just have theta? Well, it's actually kind of simple. There's a function called the inverse sine. And the inverse sine is the opposite of sine, just like multiplication and division are opposites, addition, subtraction. And so if we do this, if we take the inverse sine of the sine of theta, again, we have to do that to both sides because we're looking at an equation. What's going to happen here is this. These two things are inverses of each other. And when we do inverses of each other, they cancel each other out in essence. And so this is going to go like this, gone. And we just have theta left over. So theta is going to be equal to the inverse sine of 10 over 15. Okay. Now, the way we usually plug this into our calculator is we look for the inverse sine operation on our calculator. Now, it's usually attached to the sine. You have sine as a button, and then you have above it, you have sine inverse like that. Okay, and so what we're going to do is we're going to look for that sine button and then the sine inverse button. Typically speaking, on most calculators, in order to get sine inverse, you have to hit the second option. You have to hit the second button first and then hit the sine button. okay? And so you're going to do that. You're going to hit second and then the sine button, and it should throw something like this into your calculator. A lot of times they put a parentheses around it, and then just do 10 divided by 15, and that would give me theta. Now, if you plug that into your calculator, what I got I got theta is equal to negative 41.81 degrees. Okay. Now, that negative might throw you off, but remember on the unit circle, we have this and we have that. And when I go this direction, that's positive, and when I go this direction, that's negative, a negative angle. Okay, so in essence, what we're doing here is this angle that I have is in the negative direction, but it is still 41 degrees. And so really, this negative is just the orientation of the triangle, not necessarily that it's a negative degree angle. And so we're just going to get rid of it, and we're going to say that the angle is equal to 41.81 degrees. Okay, let's take a look at another example of a right triangle. Let's say that we are looking for theta right here. And we have a 6 here and a 12 here. And we want to know what is the angle measure of theta. Actually, so we use a different function. We're going to put the 6 right here. Otherwise, we would use sine again. So again, if we're looking at SOHCAHTOA, we are looking at this angle now right here, and we're saying, in relation to that angle, what is the 6 and what is the 12? And if you notice, if you're looking at theta, the 6 is the side adjacent, and the 12 is the side that's the hypotenuse. So we would be using the cosine function for this angle, based on the side lengths that we have. So to set up our equation, we would say that the cosine of theta, our unknown angle, is equal to 6 over 12. Okay. Now, you could just reduce that to 1/2 and say that this is the inverse cosine, the cosine of 1/2. You could do that. You don't have to, but you could. Now, again, we want to get rid of the cosine and just leave theta, and so that we have our answer. Now, just like the inverse sine, there's also an inverse cosine button on your calculators. So again, if we do the inverse cosine of theta, those, it's kind of confusing, but those will just make theta. And then so in my calculator, I'm going to plug in the inverse cosine of 1/2. Okay. Again, same thing with sine. You're going to have to hit in your calculator, you're going to have to hit the second option and then the cosine button. And that should give you inverse cosine. And if you do that, you should get that theta is equal to 60 degrees. And that would be how you would calculate that angle. And so with that, I think that'll be the end of our video. Now, if you have any questions, again, please put them in the comments or email me or whatever you need to do so that you understand what's going on. I realize this online platform is probably a little bit harder than what you've dealt with in the past, but I hope if you can ask questions, I can post videos that will address your questions. I can answer questions within emails, but the important thing is that we are trying to learn in this weird phase that we're in. But again, just let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.